Hey guys, kinggath here, and welcome back to the kinggath podcast. For those of you who follow my channel closely, you'll know it's been on ice for a little while. I decided to start off 2020 taking it easy with that so I could focus on the next Sim Settlements expansion, and I had mentioned in a post in the update for the channel that I would bring back the podcast for the right guest, and the right guest has definitely come along. I'm sure you guys, if you follow the Fallout community in general, know that on the very near horizon is a brand new humongous mod for Fallout New Vegas called The Frontier. It is going to be released very, very soon, and I am joined by TGSpy to talk about that freaking amazing looking project. Welcome, sir.
Oh, hello. You were like one of the first people to actually pronounce my name right on the first try, and I really appreciate that.
Do you usually get like TigSpy or something, or TigSpy?
T-Gypsy, Tigsby, yeah, every single little thing.
I was gonna go with TigSpy just because that sounds funny, but yeah, TGSpy seemed correct just looking at it.
It all works.
So you guys have been working on something that I think a lot of people just dismissed as never going to happen. I think that's what we've all of us in the Bethesda community, we all play these games, we watch these big mods get announced, and we all roll our eyes over and over again because it's been going on since Morrowind that people have been announcing these massive projects, and very few of them make it to the finish line. And you guys have shown with all the progress and stuff you've been releasing lately for other people's channels, and if any of you wants to see some of that footage, I've seen some on Juicehead's channel. I'm trying to think where else I've seen it. I've seen it on a bunch of different channels. Like, you guys are marketing like crazy right now, which you should be because your stuff looks amazing. But how long of a journey has this been for you guys?
Well, I joined the project back in early 2015, and that time I was still in high school, so I started off the project doing sort of little interiors and stuff, very basic sort of mid-level stuff. So I've been doing this now for a good 5 years, but the project itself started back in early 2014 when the original project founder sort of came up with the idea of, hey, let's put a Fallout game in Portland, but make it snowy.
Right.
And that was initially the entire concept of the project was, oh, we're going to make Fallout in Portland and it's going to be snowy. Some people have asked, like, oh, is there more to it? And it's like, no, it's just, we wanted to tell a story in the snow. Like, Anchorage was cool. Let's do that, but like a big mod.
Sure. I mean, it looks real. I've seen a lot of modding because there's been weather overhauls and stuff for Fallouts, and like in Fallout 4, there's winter mods, and they look really cool. Like, it really fits the Fallout universe to have that bleak white background. It's freaking cool looking. So you guys are doing a whole mod story based around that. The whole world's going to be snowy. I guess I should get a little more precise about you in particular. So what was your role originally, and then what is your role now on the project?
Originally, I was brought in sort of as a little helping hand back in early 2015 to just help make interiors, because that was all I was really capable of doing at the time. I joined the project when I was very much a beginner modder. I was lucky enough to know some people that got me into the project, and I'd say thank God for that, because in doing so, I've now sort of risen up the ranks, and I'm now project lead, co-lead, and manager and quality assurance lead for the entire project, which is essentially just doing a bit of absolutely everything.
Sure. That's a lot of hats, man.
It is. It's sort of a necessity. One of the things that happened with the project over the years, as time went on, people were getting less and less motivated to actually do work, and we sort of had to say, if we don't have a change in leadership at some point, we're going to have an issue where no one knows what they're supposed to be doing. And so I took up the mantle of leading the project a few years back, and that's the way it's been ever since.
Sure. I think a lot of people who have worked on the big teams can commiserate with that. It's really difficult when you go, because I don't think people recognize when they volunteer and sign up for these that you're effectively building a whole new video game, and you're doing it with a bunch of people who are just putting in a couple hours a week. I mean, you'll be a core group that's putting in a lot more than that, but the majority of people are just putting a few hours a week. So when people dive into this, I don't think they recognize they're actually committing to 5 to 7 years of work on a project. So it tends to be the norm, I think, that what you just described of demotivation starts to set in, and there's people coming and going, and it's a tough thing. It's a tough area to work in.
Oh, it really is. Like, it gets to the point where you're like, do I want to be working on this mod anymore? Because we got to a point within the team where like multiple members of the core team were dropping off the face of the earth, and we couldn't get in touch with anyone. No work was being done. And so we've really tried to push within the last couple of years to just get as much work done as possible. We set up monthly merges. We've now changed that to 2 weekly merges where we put all of our content into the main master file and ship that off to the Google Drive, and then we all use it. And just setting up core teams and little subgroups that we can use for different elements of the mod, like side content, the different quest lines, weapons, armors, assets, all that sort of stuff. And I think those sort of specializations and compartmentalizations really did help sort of get the team on track to be able to work at an efficient rate.
That sounds really cool. That's actually, I've heard Bethesda people, like I think I've heard Todd Howard in interviews talk about how they set up little strike teams just to focus on, like this little squad, you guys are just going to work on power armor. This little squad, you guys are just going to focus on side quests for this part of the world map or whatever. And that way people can just kind of rally together and power through a section of the game. It seems like a pretty effective way to do things, at least in a Bethesda game.
Oh, it really is. It's very practical in a sense. But the other thing to keep in mind is with such a team, the problem with New Vegas modding, as it sort of has been over the last few years, is you don't get many modders coming onto the scene anymore. You get smaller modders who, have been working on mods for a few months, but they don't really feel the desire to work on these bigger mods. And as such, we've sort of had the same core team now for the last 4 or 5 years, which has made it difficult to sort of branch out and set up these little strike forces, because everyone's so dead set on what they're doing. Like one person will do the NCR main quest, one person will do visual effects, one person will do animation. I think the biggest thing that I sort of strived for in the last couple of years is to bring on people who are happy to do the multi-hat job, do a few things at once, because I think I'm not in the gaming industry, so I can't say what is and what isn't, but I believe that being a generalist and being able to do many things at once is one of the most effective ways to work properly in a team, especially when you're not, set with a specific role or thing that you have to do. Like you are only dedicated to, fixing bugs in this specific area for the next 3 months.
Right.
Sort of bringing on new people to take on the different hats. We've had Zoo the Skunk, who is a fantastic New Vegas modder. He's done every single one of our custom icons for every single piece of armor, weapon, misc item, ammo. And he's done that alongside fixing every single armor piece and weapon. And he's done that just by himself in the last 3 years.
Wow. That's a lot of work. Especially if the number of items I've read is accurate. You guys have just crazy numbers of new stuff you're adding in. I mean, you're adding in everything. You've got new equipment, new weapons, new ammo. You've got vehicles. Like just the amount of new features you guys are advertising is nutty in itself, much less the fact that you have a whole new world and new landscape which required all new textures. Like the amount of stuff you guys are putting in is just crazy.
It really can become sort of crazy to look at the mod, especially as it's evolved over the years. Originally we had the single main quest, the NCR main quest, that was worked on and still is being worked on by Devil's Wish 182, who's a fantastic scripter and writer. It originally was just that, and then we expanded it out to include a Legion quest line, and within the last couple of years we've expanded it out to include a third quest line, which is the Crusaders quest line, which is an offshoot of the Brotherhood of Steel. Information on that can be found, floating about in different videos. But essentially, there's just so much content that we got to a point where we're like, maybe we should calm down. Maybe we should start wrapping things up, which is sort of why we're at this point now where we're really pushing hard on the public relations and the marketing stuff, because we really do have enough content, Right now, we could physically release the mod right now and we would be happy with it. But we won't, simply because we're not at a point where we think it's polished enough to release to the public. Also, we're waiting on multiple characters worth of voice acting. So there's also that.
It's a good time to get polish work done because I think one of the things I've noticed with the game industry and just in the entertainment industry in general is there's so much content to consume in every landscape, whether it's into podcasts like this or in gaming or movies. There's so much stuff to consume now that people don't have time for poorly optimized or poorly written content anymore. So like you see this in the gaming industry, like with something like, on the fall, we're all in the Fallout little universe here. We've all seen what happened with 76 and what a train wreck that was. And like I think that audience for 76, like they've got their Wastelanders update coming out, that the audience for that is going to be substantially smaller than if they had rolled out with that and actually just worked this out in the get-go. Like I think people are losing their patience to get through the bugs. So I think this is really smart of you guys to like slow down, polish it up, bug hunt the hell out of it, and get it ready so that knowing that you pretty much get that, one shot for a first impression.
Oh yeah, like I'm just comparing to other mod releases. New California, fantastic mod. It came out really well, but on release there was just numerous things that could have been, tweaked and changed here and there. And I think that really sort of backlashed for them a little bit. And I do really empathize with them, but it was just those two guys working on it for so many years. And I can see why they wanted to get the mod out. But since we're not like allotted a time frame where we're like, we have to get this mod done by March or April, because we've got a studio that's going to say, if this game isn't out in the next 5 weeks, people are going to start getting cut, people are going to get in trouble. We have the ability to just take our time, and because I think you get one shot to deliver a product or deliver a game that people will want to come back and enjoy. And if people don't like what they see when they first get it, they can't guarantee that they're going to come back when you've gone back through and, spent 9 or 12 months fixing things up. Because, as you said, people don't have a lot of patience anymore. People just want to go in, play the game, and call it a day. And that's it. And that's why I think sort of just taking the time to really hone in on the product that you want to release. You want to make it as perfect as you possibly can, because you get that one chance, and then it's out there. It's out there for everyone to enjoy or dislike or, think is average. And like, you want to deliver the best possible thing, especially with modding, is you've put so many years into it and you really want it to be as good as it can be.
Oh, absolutely. And there's a quote from somebody at Nintendo that I've heard referenced a lot, which is something like, "No one will remember a delay, but everyone will forget a bad game." Like that is, I don't know, that's not the exact quote. I'm screwing it up, but that's the general gist of it.
It's exactly right, and it stands true to this day. It really does. That's why we've had multiple occasions where we've said, "Oh, we're going to be releasing this year. We're going to be releasing in December. We're going to be releasing in 2015." Yeah. We were originally scheduled to release before the release of Fallout 4.
Wow.
That never happened.
Yeah. I am guilty of that as well. And sometimes it's because those deadlines are helpful internal. Like even for myself, like I put a crazy amount of time into making mods, and just having a target date for me is motivating. And so like sometimes I set those dates like just so that I have something to focus on and be like, okay, I can do this in this amount of weeks and this many weeks. And it's tough not to have that in your sites, but it is a bummer when you announce it publicly and can't meet it. That sucks.
Oh yeah, it really is. It's why we've tried to not set any really concrete dates. Like we're happy to say we're coming this year, and then if we don't release this year, we just say, okay, we'll get it done next year. If we set like March 23rd, like that's the release date of Half-Life Alyx. If we release then, like we're going to be done then. That would put a lot of strain and a lot of pressure on the team itself to get the work done by then, when instead we could just say, okay, we have an internal date that we would like to meet, but if we don't meet it, it's not a problem, because we haven't released a deadline to the public that we want to get the mod out. We just want to take as much time as we need, and not more time than we should, to get the mod as polished as we possibly can.
That's what we're doing right now on our project. I made the mistake of doing what you just described for the last 2 expansions we released, and we had really rocky launches. Fortunately, we have a very passionate fan base, but I can tell from personal experience that putting out that date is good in that it lights a fire under your butt, and then the people who are passionate will definitely step up their game and put in some serious hours. But you risk tainting that first impression for a lot of folks, which I think for something like what you guys are doing, you're creating this extremely unique experience that exists outside. Because if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but this is not meant to be a Tale of Two Wastelands style. This is meant to be a whole experience, correct? Like you rolled a new character in Oregon.
I will correct you on that because it is meant to be experienced as sort of a DLC. We sort of considered it as like a super DLC. It's essentially its own new game, just with regards to the amount of content there is, but you experience it at the same time as all of the other, New Vegas DLCs, Honest Hearts, Old Wood Blues, Lonesome Road, and all of that. But there is a benefit in doing all of those, having done all of those DLCs before you go into the mod, because you can say, oh, okay, I've done this and this and this, and so my character would know this little bit of information that can be brought up to an NPC. We have some instances where if you have done certain quests for Dead Money or Lonesome Road or Honest Hearts, you can bring that up to characters that know the events that would have occurred through those DLCs. You can say, like, if you've been to Hidden Valley in the vanilla game, you can say, oh, I've been to Hidden Valley, and here's what's here, and the characters will respond accordingly. It is, for the sake of compatibility and for the sake of playing it through for the first time, I do strongly recommend that people take a new character. It takes 15-20 minutes, just use some console commands to get yourself leveled up. We might even potentially include an extra mod to help the player get leveled up and set a couple of choice, questions, story states, just to help the player get situated, because we really want the player to experience the frontier sort of in one big chunk, rather than, going, oh, I'm going to do these DLCs first, I'm going to go play the vanilla game a bit, play some other mods, and then I'm going to get to the frontier. Because by the time you get to the frontier, after having done everything, you might have played, 40, 50 hours, and, your saves, it's just a problem with the engine. Over time, your saves start to get really large, and it can start to break down a little bit. And it's why I'm pushing for the new game experience. Not in the sense that New California is its own game experience, because you start that from the main menu. In this case, once you hit a certain level, a character will introduce themselves to you and tell you to come and join the Frontier NCR. And from there, you get to start the mod as itself.
Okay. So you actually you're still going to wake up in Good Springs or whatever alt start mod you're using and do your thing, and then you'll head to the frontier just like you would one of the DLC.
Yeah, that's correct. We felt that was probably the best way to do it, because otherwise it would make it a little bit more difficult to incorporate elements of the story from other DLCs or other parts of the main game if the player never experiences them. So, like, as I said, the Hidden Valley idea is, you can say, oh, I've been to the Hidden Valley, and the characters will react accordingly.
I think that'll actually be a nice breath of fresh air, because I think so many games tend to treat this is one of the things I have a problem with the DLC, is that I'll go do the DLC and then I'll return to the main game world, and there's no acknowledgement anywhere that ever happened. So it feels almost like it doesn't matter, because that's one of my favorite parts about things like what was the Fallout 3, the first DLC they did, where it extended the main quest line, where then all of a sudden people were reacting to the fact that there was water now. Broken Steel, yeah. And before that, the game just went to end and you were just done. And then, like, once they added that in, and now people would comment like, oh, thank God for the water, and like people talking about how there were shipments and Three Dog talking about the stuff going on the radio. All those just made it feel like I'm in a living world and the things I did actually impacted people. So, like, I think these little things you're doing are going to be just huge for that of all of a sudden feeling like, oh, that stuff I just did 100 hours ago mattered, and it's opening up new doors for me.
It's one of the things when we've done our writing and our quest design is we've really tried to make the world itself feel as connected as possible. Because one of the problems I have with some quest mods, I couldn't name any for the life of me, but it's a problem I've seen with quest mods is that they'll have these, they'll have this quest where you meet this slaver, and that slaver, he could have a big company, a slaving company, organization, whatever. That organization would never be mentioned outside of that small quest. And it's like, you've built up all of this lore and this information about this character and about this world, and it's never spoken about again. And so that's something we've really, really tried hard to make sure doesn't happen. So, if I may use the example of the slaver again, you will meet a slaver organization in the frontier that connects with about three other different quests. And if you hadn't played those quests, you would never realize that was connected. But if you've played those quests already and you go back and play this one and you see the slaver organization and you read the notes that are associated with, you're like, wait, I know this character already. I know the events that took place for this to happen. And it's that sort of world building that makes a mod in itself so much more connected and so much more fulfilling, really, because being able to see that the events that happen in a situation or in a location or through a character spread out to more than just the isolated quest or character area really does make the world feel lived in more than anything else.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's actually one of my complaints about the Bethesda style of game, and going back to the thing we talked about, the strike teams attacking things, is you can tell that a lot of the content is all designed in a bubble. It's the main quest is its own thing, and that has interconnectedness for itself in all of its little branches and side quests that are tied to it. But everything else is kind of independent, and you get none of it seems to have an impact, and that's always kind of a bummer when you get to the end of the game, and then it's like, oh, none of that really didn't matter to any of this, even though it probably should have.
It really does sort of get a little draining at times. It's like, oh, I did all this work for this massive, company and this massive faction, and then it's like you never hear about the faction again. It's sort of it's a big pet peeve of mine, and it's something we've really tried to work on for the Frontier. And I'll use the example across all three major quest lines. I won't spoil and say what it is because I'll talk about story in a sec. But we've been really tried to be tight-lipped about what we say about the story because we don't want to say too much and give away the experience. But anyway, there is a point in the story that is replicated across all three of the major quest lines. So during all three of those major quest lines, they are essentially their own paths, but they still hit these same beats. These same locations are used over and over again because they are so integral to the story and to the world itself that it would feel really weird to have not included these little locations and these situations.
Sure. So now when you guys are doing three stories, is this one of those situations where you have to choose someone and go along them, or you get to do all of them and experience the full gambit of the mod?
Unfortunately, it's one of those situations where you really do have to just choose one path.
Okay.
Because as it turns out, the scripting and making sure that you can switch between the different quest lines, especially when said quest lines will often interact, as I said, with the
Yeah.
same story beats, you need to make sure that those storylines don't collide in a way that's like, oh, I'm doing this to this location, but in another quest line, I'm doing the same thing to another location, but in a different way. And it gets really confusing. So through the NCR, the Legion, and the Crusaders quest line, there are always points where you will not be able to join the other quest lines. In the sense of the Legion, I believe I've discussed it before publicly. There is a point very early on in the NCR main quest, which is the first quest line that you start on, where you are given the opportunity to join the Legion, and you do the Legion quest line from there. If you don't take that option, then you don't get another chance. And we put that early in the NCR quest because otherwise players would be like, oh, when do I get to join the Legion? Do I have to do 40 hours of this other quest line first? But
Right.
in this sense, you get to join the Legion very quickly. And Crusaders, since they're more of a independent-ish ending and quest line, you can join them at pretty much any time you want, but you will realize very, very quickly that within the first quest or two, you will have to make decisions that will affect your standing with the other two major factions, depending on which quest line you're doing. You might have to do some things that will anger the NCR, or you'll have to kill someone that's important to the Legion in order to complete the Crusaders quest line and continue playing the game. Because it really is, I'll be completely honest, it is a complete nightmare trying to script and make sure that all three quest lines match up together and don't accidentally override or collapse into some weird singularity with each other, because it's
Right.
just it really can get quite difficult at points, because there's so many quests in each quest line, and they sometimes match up, meet up. You don't always get railroaded through a different point, so you can go explore and do other things, and yada yada yada.
Yeah.
So that's why we've tried to keep it as each story is its own separate storyline as much as possible.
I think that's totally legitimate, and it adds replayability. But I think we're used to seeing that in games, and I think if you look at something like Fallout 4, where this is one of the examples I can think of where they kind of let you play all sides till the last minute. I think that a lot of people were disappointed by that then, because then that took away that replayability, and it made a lot of the decisions feel less meaningful, because it's like, oh, it just comes down to this like kind of last battle, this last couple of battles in my decision making. So I think
Yeah.
I think it's I think you could argue one way or the other about which way is good. I think for people who don't have a lot of time, it's nice to be able to think like, oh, I could try out all these quest lines at once. But if I think most of us, we keep going back to these games every year. We're just like, all right, time for another New Vegas playthrough, and then it would be like time for another Frontier playthrough, and this time I'll side with so and so. So I think that's a decent choice. And I mean, nobody expects even the big studios to do a fully interweaving quest line that you can change at any moment and pull it off. Like, that's just the amount of writing and juggling for that would be insane. So, like, I don't think anybody's going to hold you guys to that since you're a mod team. You're doing it for free.
That's exactly it. There's always plenty of playability in doing the quest lines. For first players, though, I would absolutely recommend always starting with the NCR main quest. And probably the major reason for that is that the NCR main quest has had the absolute bulk of the development time of the mod put into it. We've been working on that. Devil's Wish has been working on that pretty much solo since late 2015, back when I started. He's been doing that solo with just help from assets and interior creation with Mac and Jason. But he's been working on that, scripting it, writing every single line of dialogue for that himself since early 2015, and it's had the most work put into it of anything in the mod, just because of how much time has been put into it.
Sure. Yeah, you mentioned Wedgeson. He's actually the reason I even ever knew about the Frontier, because I had reached out to him after seeing what he did with Eve. I reached out to him to ask about some stuff that he must have known about the Bethesda, the creation engine, so that we could pull off some special effects in Sim Settlements. And he responded to me, like, asking me a bunch of questions, and he said, really though, all my focus is on the Frontier. Once that's released, I'd be happy, I'll look into helping out with other mods. Like, I think he thought I was asking him to come join us, but really I just was like trying to pick his brain. And then I had to look up what the Frontier was, and that was back in 2017. Now, you had just brought him up, but I wanted to talk about that because his work on Eve was incredible. That was such a cool mod for New Vegas, and he has since been working with you guys this whole time. So I'm imagining you guys have some pretty crazy, flashy special effects coming our way.
To say it's crazy and flashy would be probably an understatement for Jack, because Jack is like the Michael Bay of visual effects for these Fallout games. I mean, considering that he's been working on the Fallout games and modding them since like early 2009 when Fallout 3 first came out, the stuff that he's doing now for the Frontier will, by and large, blow away anything you have ever seen in Eve Fallout 3, in any of his other mods. They are just beyond like anything you've ever seen. In fact, one of the most recent things he figured out how to do was an animation technique called sprite sheets, which
Okay.
essentially allows the creation of particles that are really well animated. And
Okay.
if you can believe it or not, Bethesda did not use the technique whatsoever in Fallout 3. Obsidian did not use it in New Vegas. The last time it was used was in Shivering Isles for Oblivion. And
Ha!
as far as we're aware, that is one of the only instances where Bethesda ever utilized sprite sheet animation. And it's like, if you look up sprite sheet animation on the web, you will find that it is essentially the backbone of all visual effects and particle systems and, really cool stuff in the modern game engines. And for whatever reason, it was never really a possibility on the New Vegas engine. But within the last couple months, Jack has somehow managed to figure out how to do it, and the results are pretty spectacular because it allows things that have just never been possible before. You can have one particle system doing the work of five, and it really does just blow your mind seeing some of the stuff. We've put out some videos recently showing off some of the new weapons, and I'll
I
be
think I
putting out
saw
an
one
even.
that shoots out a big beam and that splits into a bunch of fireballs. Is that one of those?
Yes, that is the newest and latest thing Jackson working on called the Jericho. That is, I think, his most ambitious visual effects thing to date. It is truly and utterly unbelievable how cool it is and how cool it sounds,
Yeah.
because it's just doing stuff that you like. Wow, how the hell is that possible? Even I don't know. Like, it's wizardry. And what blows my mind is he does every single one of these things in NIF scope.
Oh
We
my
don't have
god.
we have absolutely no way, aside from really tacky blender stuff, to export particles for Fallout New Vegas. So he does everything in Blender, working with pure numbers and pure math,
Oh
and
my
just the
god.
NIF knows themselves. And he's been doing this now for like 10 years, and it really does blow my mind.
That's nuts that he does all that in NIF scope. It's funny. Are you familiar with Nero? He does a lot of Fallout 4 armor and weapon mods.
I
He
think the name sounds familiar. Yeah.
Okay, his stuff. He also does all of his effects and stuff in NifScope, even though we have all the tools to export all that stuff from 3ds Max. So it's crazy to me that people figure that stuff out. I don't understand how people can wrap their head around it. Can I guess if like I can see it, like programmers have to do that. The programmers who generate the original special effects have to figure out like how does this number transform into it. But man, the brains of these technical artists who figure out how to take those numbers and turn it into art is pretty wild.
It really does. It's one of the things that I've not even bothered to try and figure out, because I would probably spend the next 10 years trying to figure out how to get even close to what Jack is doing. It
Well,
really does blow your mind.
Well, that's really cool to hear, because one of the problems that is always with these big mods is that you're working on them so long that the gaming industry passes you by, even more so than it already passes most Bethesda games. Because I think like when New Vegas came out, it wasn't exactly cutting edge technology. So now you guys are way behind on that. So anything you can do to make up for that shortfall is going to be a big deal. Like I think you guys are making up for it by adding a lot of new stuff we've never seen in any Fallout game, like vehicles, for example. That's really cool to see in those videos. Was that something you guys set out to do from the get-go, or was that something you guys figured out down the line and decided to add on to your ever-growing feature creep list there?
I think it was something we originally planned very early on, to have vehicles in Fallout snowy environment. We utilized some techniques that went back to Fallout 3, actually. There was the drivable Chimera tank mod from Fallout 3 that was really cool at the time, but we've since, massively reworked the code base and the animations. Like, all of the vehicles have custom animations, custom models, custom everything, and the scripting is just awesome. It's not We don't use XRE or any of those vehicle engines because they are very prone to being extremely buggy, especially
Mm-hmm.
considering how old they are. But the vehicle systems we have are pretty much as good as we can really realistically get within the New Vegas engine, because it was not designed to handle the complex motion of, suspensions, hydraulics, and all of that other
Sure.
car stuff that I can't even begin to imagine.
I mean, you guys pulled off destructibility to it too, which looked pretty awesome in the preview videos I've seen.
Yeah, Jack decided that one day he would make everything explode. And he was not kidding, because originally we just had the vehicles explode and a little fireball, and that was that. But he decided that every vehicle should have little destruction stages where bits of it would chip off, and you would be able to, see the vehicle get destroyed in real time. You'd have little fires on the side of the vehicle, bits of paint chipping off, metal exposed, and then eventually it would explode in this wonderful fireball, and you'd have a wreckage of the vehicle left behind that you can loot.
I mean, I think those little extra touches, like that's what's going to push this above and beyond, because that's doing the type of thing that we now expect in modern games. Like, I think a lot of people disregard Fallout 4 or write it off, but when you look at some of the improvements that they've made to their very, very system-driven engine to add all of these support for those types of things, it's just stuff we just expect now, and like we don't have it in games like New Vegas, and so adding that in just makes it even feel more modern. I think that's really worth the effort you guys are putting in.
Oh yeah. If you've ever asked Way Jason about, where do you think Fallout New Vegas lies in terms of the things you can do in the engine, he'll say it is just complete and utter garbage. Because even back when Fallout New Vegas was released in like 2010, 2011, like games at the time were still doing insane stuff. Like I think of games like Half-Life 2, which still to this day look incredible compared to games like New Vegas. And it's like, where did that drop in quality come from? I know that Half-Life 2 was the biggest game of all time, and it was like yada yada yada, pushing even the most powerful rigs at the time. But this is a 2010 game, and it looks like a 2003 game. This is Jack's words, not mine. I personally couldn't care less. I just like the gameplay and the ability that we can mod it, really.
Yeah. Oh, I think I am way into the this game engine, and I give them mad props for even though they're behind the curve on graphics, they make sure that everything is super systems driven and modular, which is not what you'd see in most game engines because it's not the most efficient way to do things. But I think eventually they will have an advantage in the field because they have all this experience doing everything dynamic and modular, whereas a lot of other game companies have focused on graphics and they sacrifice a lot of that modularity, whereas the graphics will eventually and the hardware will catch up to a point where, I mean, we're already getting to that point where it's I don't really, when I see a new AAA game can't come out, the graphics don't impress me anymore. I've seen it all. Like nobody's doing anything new in graphic technology. There's nowhere else to go. Like it's getting to the point where it's so close to photorealism, any more real, and they're in the uncanny valley, and I don't like it. So it's like,
Yeah.
Eventually Bethesda will catch up to that, and then all of their time they've spent making their engine super modular and adding all this systems driven stuff will pay off in spades. That's what I look at it as.
I agree too. Just the ability to be able to mod a game with a tool like the GEC, even with how awful and terrible and gutted and crash prone and error prone it is still light years beyond anything we have for pretty much any other game engine, which really kind of sucks because there's a lot of games that I could see having a huge modding scene if they actually, provided it. You think the Outer Worlds, like if that had a modding scene from the start, I reckon the game would have gotten a lot more attention because think of everything you could do in a game like that. I've never played it because the lack of modding put me off.
Yeah, I don't know why there hasn't been another big company to release their full tool suite. But I think even if they did, I think part of it is I think a lot of these suites are integrated with third-party stuff where there's licensing issues. But on top of that, I don't think their games are designed to be as modular as Bethesda, as the creation engine. Like everything in the creation engine is designed with overwriting in mind. So like every little component can be just overridden with the on the fly, and it just works, to quote Todd Howard, most of the time.
It just works sometimes, yeah. It is one of the benefits. It is, however, one of the drawbacks I've found with the newer games is that they've moved to Papyrus, which I haven't used it, but from what I've seen, it is an inferior scripting engine compared to OB Script, which is the Oblivion scripting engine that is in Oblivion and Fallout 3 and New Vegas. Because as far as I'm aware, almost all of Papyrus is event driven and it is not tick and timer based like OB Script is.
Yeah, that's I still love Papyrus because it's so powerful, but I think it's the amount of resources it has available to it is pretty small, and it can run into a lot of problems. Like you can actually make broken mods very easily with it, just because the game can't handle as much as you're allowed to pump at it. So that's a problem with Papyrus. And I think if they would do more of this at a lower level, it would be a lot more efficient. But I'm happy to have the power. Like I don't know that I could go back and script for something like New Vegas anymore, just because I've got so much freedom with Papyrus.
That's another thing with New Vegas as well, is because the scripting engine is, a little bit more or significantly more simplified. It's still incredibly powerful, especially with, script extenders like the JebRWocky plugin, which adds 800 plus new functions that we can use for everything and anything. You think of NVSE aware functions like arrays and strings and, aux variables that essentially are, new active variables for anything you could possibly want. They're just, the possibilities really are endless. Which is why I enjoy scripting in this engine so much, because it is really just, you plug something in. If it doesn't work, you just rescript it. No issues. You don't have to worry about overwriting files or compiling 101 different things. You just save and go. We will require pretty much every component of the script extender plugin family that there is. We'll require the user interface organizer, because we add our own HUD elements for the chill factor, and for our vehicle HUDs, we'll require JebRWocky for all the gameplay and engine fixes, as well as obviously the actual scripting functions that we use, and obviously New Vegas anti-crash and New Vegas tick fix for performance.
Sure. I think it's not even a big deal to expect that anymore, just because I think anybody who's still playing New Vegas to this day is using the script extender. There's way too many. I mean, just like the crash fix alone makes it worth the price of admission of having stuff like that.
Absolutely.
So, like, I think you gotta expect people who are still playing it after, I mean, basically almost 10 years, that they're the type of people who are going to be happy to use as many plugins that are available as possible. You're not worried about a console market or anything.
No, exactly. I've never really understood the concept of, not requiring anything else. You just use the vanilla game and nothing else. If you want to make the best possible thing you can, you use everything that's available to you, which is definitely what we do. We use all the available main DLCs, all the script extender plugins, pretty much everything we can possibly use, custom functions to do specific things for us. Everything we can use, we try and use, because it's there, it's available. Why not use it?
Yeah, I only push back because of the same reason that you would say you don't develop games for the latest and greatest hardware. You want to do it for a little bit back, as you want to make sure you cast as wide a net as possible and let as many people enjoy it as possible. That's my only pushback to it. And then, like, for Fallout 4 and Skyrim Special Edition, is now you have this console market that you could potentially share with. So, like, then that's a reason. But yeah, I think for games that are at this stage, like Fallout 3, New Vegas, it's just no reason not to. I think the audience now, everybody's still playing, is fully on board with all these extra tools.
Plus all these extra tools, gets us this amazing array of new content, available in the frontier. Like some of the stuff we were doing with weapons and the such would not be possible without, the script extenders. On weapons, we've got the Jericho, we've got other energy weapons. I think I did an energy weapons count recently, and we have like a dozen different energy weapons, all doing different unique things with amazing particle effects and visual effects. And most of that wouldn't have been possible without, the scripting engine and the script extender itself.
Sure. Now, from the look of it, like everything I've watched about the Frontier, to me, it looks like what New Vegas was to Fallout 3. It looks like it's a whole nother evolution of the engine. It can be, I mean, I know you're saying you have to start in New Vegas, obviously, for your character, but there's enough content to equal a full Fallout game. Is that accurate, or is that just me overhyping it in my head because I want it to be that?
It is, to me, extremely difficult, because to me personally, when I hop in the game and I hop into the Frontier world space, especially with the last few videos, I'll be completely honest, it was difficult for me to go and find things to do, not because we're lacking content, but because I don't want to spoil the content that we have. So I actually had to write notes ahead of time about what I was and wasn't going to show off. I was only allowed to show off little bits of quests because I didn't want to spoil the whole thing. it makes recording stuff very difficult. But for people who are just hopping in the game for the first time, I would reason to say that is enough for a full game, considering we have like 20,000 lines of custom voice dialogue for dozens and dozens and dozens of different characters. I think there is enough content for people to say, yeah, no, this is pretty much a new game. I will say it might not be as big as New Vegas in some senses. There's not as many endings. But in other ways, like our ESM itself is like 300,000 or 400,000 records bigger than the vanilla game, which is like double the size.
Wow.
Which is kind of insane when you think about it.
That's very cool to hear. It looks like that. It looks like it's big enough for a full experience. So you mentioned the script extender being a requirement and some of these other things like the crash thing and everything. Have you guys started to assemble, or have you had in mind while developing a set of mods that you recommend people use? Like that was something that I noticed with New California. There was a big list of like, it will work great with if you grab these big popular mods. Do you guys have a similar thing planned, or have you been designing it the whole time in a vacuum, thinking like, we want you just to experience it, with these framework type mods, but don't screw up the experience with all this external stuff? Or what was your thought process in that?
If I'm being totally honest, I have never had a very high opinion of the quality of a lot of New Vegas mods, especially as I've, become a better modder and learned how to, optimize my mods. I've been quite honest to our playtesters as well, like saying if you want to playtest the Frontier, please test it with as few mods as possible, because we don't want you to, spoil the experience by having a sequence break because one of your mods was, screwing with something. So we don't necessarily have a recommended list of mods, but the mods that I personally can recommend is anything made by Jazz's Paris, because he is a literal god of like just scripting, and he knows what he's doing in regards to all of that. I recommend Just Mods, which is a set of gameplay feature mods that is basically the replacement for Solid Project and sort of a wider extent Project Nevada.
Okay.
I would strongly advise people not to use gameplay changing mods or balance changing mods like Project Nevada, especially its AI changes, because those can and do have a potential to break things. I would recommend, as I said, I recommend just sticking with as vanilla a playlist as possible. Like, you can keep your armor and your weapon and your, slutty mods all you want, because it doesn't affect the Frontier to any real extent. But having those mods that, make NPCs react in different ways and make NPCs run away from combat if you're wearing power armor, there is a chance that could severely break things, which is why I do recommend just like going into the Frontier a modded version, just be yep, I'm going to go in as clean as possible because I don't want to ruin the experience. It's why I play with extremely few mods. Like, I can look at my mod list and it's literally just Yukagichi's unofficial patch, Dynafied UI, which is my HUD mod of choice, Just Mods, Jazz's mods, FOV slider, and some of Zalandro's mods, because they are, as I said as well, extremely well made, and I can trust that they're good quality.
Sure.
So on the sort of New California side, I would say we don't really have any recommended mods as recommended by the team, but I do recommend some personal mods that I would use and are safe to use alongside the Frontier.
Yeah, I don't think anybody can blame you from encouraging your testers not to do it. I do the same, because it's just a matter of there's too many variables then for you to parse out when you're trying to just build this thing in the first place. So like that, no doubt, I would say you definitely want your testers to be running on a clean save. But I think there's a lot of people, they've got their set of mod lists that are, a lot of players will comment on mods like, this is a permanent part of my load order. But I've always looked at these big overhaul mods or these new world space mods as a chance to play a new game. And then I would want to approach it from like, okay, now that I've experienced that, how would I change it for my next playthrough, and look into mods from there. And you see this with some mods start to get mods for them. Like Endurial has now, I can never say say that correctly, but like that for Skyrim is that it's so different, and then people play that experience and then mod it, as opposed to, okay, I gotta have all these Skyrim mods to bring with it. And it's the same thing I would imagine that would happen with New California, or now with the Frontier, of rather than trying to take these old mods that were designed around the gameplay loop of New Vegas, instead it gives an opportunity for people to design and think of new mods that would fit well within that world. And because of the beauty of the creation engine, that's totally possible. People could take the game and then mod it with this other mod in mind.
Yeah, precisely. And honestly, I think there's enough content in terms of armor and weapons and misc items and apparel and everything else that I don't think you really need anything else to go alongside the Frontier, because on our most recent count, not including non-playable and scripted and gameplay ones, I think we have 161 new weapons, which is
that's a lot.
Absolutely no small number, especially considering I think that's more than vanilla New Vegas. Many of them have fully custom new sounds, fully custom new visual effects. Like, all of our weapons have custom bullet effects, decals, everything alongside that. Armors, I think we have 400 or 500 different playable ones.
I think where you're going to run into a problem is how many of them are slooty. That's the issue you're going to have.
Yeah, well, we've really tried to make sure that none of them are slooty. Some of them, some very, very, very few, like under 10, certainly have that slooty aspect to it. But you have to remember as well that New Vegas was never a slooty game as compared to Fallout 4 and Skyrim. So I'm sure if people want to convert them to, Type 6M or Type 3 or whatever, go nuts. Just go nuts.
It'll happen.
You do you, friends. But all of our...
That's not your priority.
Yeah, no, that is not my problem. All of our armors are designed to work around the vanilla body type, which is why I do recommend that people play with a vanilla body type, and not try to use some weird race mod that adds just.
Don't you worry. The community will solve that problem for you. They'll take care of all the race modifications and stuff. I remember my favorite moment of that is in Fallout 4. We had somebody release the anime race mod, and the guy posted in there, and it was like Google translated, and I think he's from Japan, and it was basically like, please, whatever you do not make sex mods with this. And then like within 2 hours, someone released a sex mod for it, and it was up in hot files right alongside it. It was so funny. Like, the community is relentless with that stuff.
It's truly beautiful. And disgraceful, but at the same time, mod whatever you want. We recommend people, if you want to make additions to the Frontier, go nuts. Like, when we release, if people want to add new player homes, new interiors, I mean, considering we have 500 plus interiors, which I think is more than Fallout New Vegas plus all DLCs, is more than vanilla Fallout 3, and I'm going to say is more than Fallout 4.
I'm sure it is. I don't think there's that nearly close to that to the many.
No, we have a metric ton of different interiors to add that in, like, replayability, because I said in one of our recent videos, in the information I gave to some press people, you can go your entire playthrough of like 70 plus hours and not find some towns just because you weren't paying attention. Like, that's the beauty of being able to go back and replay things. You do a Legion playthrough and you'll find 36 different characters that you've never spoken to before, because you killed them all during your NCR or Crusader playthrough.
That's awesome.
It's just, there's so much replayability there. And the good thing as well is that our armors have been set up so that they all have ground models, so when you drop them, they don't just look weird, and they all have female versions of models as well, which is something that I've noticed a ton of mods do not ever account for. Because without female models, it looks really weird to put a male armor on a female. It's bizarre. So our weapon / armor lead, Zeusskunk, did all of those, all like 300, 400 of those by hand.
That's a lot of extra work.
Oh, it's a shit ton of work. It really is. We have, like, as well as that, we have all new custom icons for pretty much everything because, why
Yeah,
not?
might as well go the full extra
We're
there at that
there.
point. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find how many actual icons we have right now. We have 914 icons, all made
Wow.
from scratch. And
That's awesome.
in
Way to go the extra mile.
Oh yeah, in some senses they're actually better than the New Vegas ones because they're higher quality, and especially for weapons and armors, the armor ones in particular always look like they were just made by some intern who just like constantly changed the position of them. But with these, it's like they're all in the same spot. Like I can go through all of them, and they're all in the exact same spot, and it looks brilliant.
Now,
Which is
are you using any of the vanilla asset or vanilla weapons or armor in your level lists, or do you just have so much custom you don't even want to waste the time with that?
in a perfect world, we would have nothing vanilla. That's something that Way Jason's always been sort of hampering on. Is we don't want to have anything vanilla. We want to have everything custom. But the reality is, sometimes you just need to use the vanilla stuff. So while we try and populate all of our leveled lists with custom icons, custom weapons, custom armors, custom misc items, sometimes there'll have to be some vanilla stuff. We try and keep weapons relatively condensed to our stuff, just so that players get to use as many of the new weapons as possible. Same with armors. We tend to not use any of the vanilla armors if we can. All of our Legion, NCR, and Crusaders have custom armors for their factions. Same with the Scavengers. They all have custom armors. But there's always going to be some vanilla items slipping in here and there. But we try and make sure that things are relatively consistent with lots of new leveled lists to make sure that our items are getting distributed fairly to the world and to the player.
That's an art in itself that not a lot of mod authors have. Like there'll be some great, amazing weapon designs that were very poorly integrated into leveled lists, and then you feel it when you're playing.
Yeah, no, it is a big problem. A lot of it is just the ability for us to go into our world space, and what I do is I'll find a container, open it up in Xedit, copy all the references to a new plugin, and just batch convert everything to use one of ours.
Okay, that's a good way to go.
It makes things a lot easier. So you can, instead of having to go in and replace or add tons of new items to existing form lists or item lists, you go in and you replace a couple hundred containers, a few thousand containers, and you're set. And you've just replaced hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of items just like that.
Sure. So I guess the next question on people's mind is going to be, when after launch or before launch are we going to get the Frontier icon pack to replace all of New Vegas's bad icons?
I'm
teasing you, but that question's gonna come up, because then it's gonna be like, okay, you guys have all these beautiful uniform icons, you put all this time in. Can we get all the vanilla items that you're using in that we can find in Portland with those beautiful icons too? That's gonna be requested. Just to throw it out there.
I'm gonna say probably not ever, because I don't know if Zooskunk feels like doing hundreds of more new icons, because he's
Zooskunk Gauntlet Throne. Do it.
Look, he's done a lot of icons. I feel really bad for him asking him to do them for all the vanilla ones. I mean, I
asked for you, well. So there you go. No problem.
We really do just want to try and get this mod out, so let's not add more work.
I'm teasing. It's just a matter. That's just like the type of thing that always gets requested, though. Is like you release this mod, you put all this effort in, and inevitably somebody finds something about it they like that they want more of, and then it like, you have no idea what you're asking for. Like, that's thousands more hours.
Someone asked, can you fix the lighting? And I'm like, can you elaborate? And he's like, he just types it in caps, fix the lighting. And I'm like, okay, buddy, you calm down there, all right? You don't know what you're talking about. And then someone else asked, this might need a texture pack. And I'm like, do you know what it would mean to add a texture pack to a mod that's already really struggling to keep itself under the memory limit? Just calm down, sir, please. This is a Wendy's. Please stop.
So one of the other things I was going to ask you about that before we move on from the topic about other mods was, what for like on launch day, what would people expect to have to do to get Frontier up and running? Like, Is it just a matter of make sure you have the anti crash patch, have F4SE running it, or F4SE F what is the New Vegas is called anyway
NVSE, yeah.
NVSE, thank you. NVSE installed and then you're good? Or is there like some config tweaks? Basically what I'm getting at is it going to be a lot of work to get it installed? And if it is, or even if it isn't, are you guys considering putting out a WebAjack installer for it? Because that's one of my latest obsessions. That program is amazing.
We have never considered and will never consider using WebAjack because I don't think that's a thing for New Vegas. As far as I'm aware, it's certainly not something that I'll ever consider. Because I've never really used it, but we will try and put out a tutorial video explaining how to install the mod in as clear a fashion as possible. It will take a little bit more effort than maybe your normal New Vegas mod because there will be some optional sections, as I said, or as you said rather. There will be some any tweaks that you can do. Any tweaks that actually work, mind you, because there is a lot of placebo any tweaks in New Vegas that people think, this thing that says B fix my FPS will really fix my FPS, and it's just total bogus. So we've tried to find the any tweaks that actually do work.
Sure.
But other than that, like, we're going to keep the mod installation as simple as possible. We won't be including any installer at all because that's something that we saw from the New California launch, is that people weren't always super on board with the installer idea because it was causing some issues sometimes. I was always for the idea of an installer, but we've since sort of rescinded on that idea. So we'll just be including a zip file, a gigantic zip file, mind you, because the mod is like 30 plus gigabytes.
Sure.
With the BSAs and the ESM and the small other folders that we'll need. Whether or not we include stuff like GPLN, the tick fix, and NVSE is to be seen. We'll have to ask permission from all the authors and everything, just to make installation a little bit easier. And considering they may not get many more updates once the Frontier is finished, but until then, we'll have to really see. It will be a simplified installation, and there will be a tutorial video. That is absolutely for sure.
Okay, interesting. The reason I brought up WebAjack is that it basically takes any mod organizer install from somebody's computer and just automates that. So it sets up all the any tweaks and can download all the files. It's just really powerful, and it's basically an installer for every Bethesda game. So I didn't know if you guys had played around with that, but it's a very powerful little system. I know it's people are concerned about it because anytime automated mod installation comes up, it's red flags go up of like, oh god, they're taking credit away. But in my eyes, it's just it's just the perfect vehicle to get new people to play your mod without them having to have a lot of modding experience.
Yeah, I've always tried to really steer clear of those because I don't want to. I've seen the discussions, I've seen the arguments that they cause, and as such, at least to me as a project lead, I don't want to get myself involved and put myself as a statement out there. It may be good. I won't say because I've never used WebAjack and I've never used any of these other installers. But at least for us, we weren't really considering using it just because none of the team has really ever used it.
Sure.
We just want to keep it as clean and manual an install as possible. And since there won't be a whole lot to install aside from the required NVSE plugins, we hope it would be pretty easy for really anyone to get started.
That's good to hear. I'm glad you guys are putting thought into that because sometimes it can feel overwhelming to get mods working for, especially the older Bethesda games compared to the newer ones. Like the fact that you can go into a mod menu in Fallout 4 and Skyrim SE and just download things straight from Bethesda has brought on a lot of players to the game, to the modding scene that have zero knowledge of what is actually happening behind the scenes to mod a game because that's so removed from everything that any ways we can improve the other processes to make them closer to that, I think are a good thing to help ease people into the modding world.
Absolutely. I've always personally been of the opinion, even if it is controversial, that I don't like the idea of everything should be done for you. I think you should always put in a bit of work to make your modded game stable. I think just like it's always good to learn. I've always valued the idea of being able to learn how to mod because it is a really valuable skill. You don't want to, just take someone else's whole mod file folder and just drop it into yours and be like, if something breaks, what do you do? How do you
Yeah.
fix it? How do you find what's broken? And that's what's, at least to me, really valuable about learning how to mod from scratch. I did that. I started modding Bethesda games with Fallout 3 back in like 2011, 2012. Installing mods, they would crash 100% of the time because I was a moron back then. But the point remained, I was still learning how to do it. And then more than anything, it was rewarding and fun when things did work the way I wanted them to.
I would only push back against that belief because you just spent 7 years designing this amazing experience that I would think you would just want as many people as possible to see it, not just those who have come in with this skill set. That's why I always like bend over backwards to try and help people figure out how to get my mods working, is just because I made this so people could experience it. So like if there's something blocking you from doing so, I want to try and help. And sometimes telling people to like go learn how mods work is a big task because there are guides to do so, but in reality it takes like if you talk to the folks on the Xedit team, like the method that they want everybody to take on is just too much for the average person. Like they call it the method, and it's just like the amount of effort it takes to get a stable load order based on what they want you to do is just like most people aren't going to do that. And so like I'm always on the opposite. Yeah, it's to get a good stable loader, but I don't think I think that only really applies, those like all that steps and everything, is when when people are trying to do these insane, like I want to come in and do this 700 mod load order I saw some YouTuber do. It's like, well, that's too much, buddy. Like you got to start. But like when people want to just come in and use, I just want to play the Frontier. I think it seems like you would want to make it so that anybody could use it, because if it's just your mod, like here you just need this and these 2 other extra plugins and you're good.
That's why we want to try and keep installation as simple as possible. So like even if you're a complete nobody who's never modded before, you've been playing Farmville, Farm City all your life, you're on Facebook 24/7, you can come in and install the Frontier and hopefully not have any issues.
Right.
But don't get me wrong, I do take issue with 700 plus mod load order videos from YouTubers, because they certainly love to claim that I run 60 FPS with 700 mods, and I've met the Queen of England and all blah 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 blah, a bunch of foo-ha and holly. But then when people actually try and install their stuff, it breaks down very quickly. That's why I try and keep a very small load order, because I know what works and I tend to know what doesn't really work well.
You don't realize this, but you're talking to one of those guys right now. I've got 2 Let's Plays out with like 250 mods, and I have this exact problem you just described of like people will try my load order and then comment on my videos like, it doesn't work, everything breaks. It's like, yeah, well, I've probably tweaked some mods in the background, or like that were messing up, or I like messed with the load order after I've released the load order, and so like it's stable for me because I know what I'm doing. And it's not for everybody to be playing with those giant load orders.
It's definitely more of a problem in New Vegas, at least, because the game is a lot less stable with more mods.
Sure.
And people tend to assume just because you can throw all of these mods into one big plugin, you use the merge plugins, script from Xedit or Mater's tools, and you're fine. It is realistically never that simple, and there's always tweaks and things that need to be done. I've got no problem with load order videos. I've just got problems with ones that claim that it will work 100% of the time, because
right.
It's just, especially for these older games, because they are so unstable when it comes to high plugin count load orders.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate the save files are so unstable, because like you said, it's the fact that you've got to encourage people, load up a new character and skip ahead to get to our stuff. Like that kind of sucks that we can't have like just because realistically there's enough content in any of the Bethesda games that's been out for a while to literally run a character for thousands of hours, but the save file is very rarely going to survive more than past triple digits.
I've done a few save files that are 100, 200 hours, and like they were really starting to clag by the end. It gets to the point where your save file is like 30 megabytes, and it takes like 5 minutes to load because you've got so many different, references loaded, havoc items moved. It clogs up the save over time.
Yeah, it's kind of a bummer. But it sounds like it'll definitely be worth it to do whatever setup you guys have imagined for getting started like that. Now, so you aren't going to do anything as an installer. Understandable. It seems like it could be quite the headache. Do you think you would do something along the lines of like a bat file to, level up to an appropriate level and skip whatever quests are necessary to like jump right into
Oh yeah,
Frontier? Is
we may even do like a straight mod as we get closer to release to help players get situated. You just put in what level you want. Maybe you can put in a list of perks that you want, what stats and specials you want, and the mod will just help you get set up. We'll consider that closer to the release just to help players get really, really quickly
sure.
involved in the mod, because we don't want players to spend 40 minutes making a save file and then they're like, oh, I'm bored, and then they're like, they never
Right,
stop,
right.
because that would suck. That would really
Yeah.
suck.
So almost you
So we
guys
want,
making like maybe like an alt start mod, basically. Like here's a
yeah,
Frontier alt
maybe
start.
something
Yeah,
like that.
sure.
Essentially, just I mean, the mod starts very simply. Like if you, once you reach level 11,
Yeah.
you wait a few hours, and an NPC will come and talk to you and say, "Hey, here's the Frontier recruitment brochure. Come visit the camp," and that's how you start the mod. And it's really just as quick and simple as that. It's just like any of the other DLCs.
Sure. Yeah, makes sense. But like I said, it's people will get bored fast, and
Oh yeah.
it's it would be a bummer for them to load up and then bail out on you. So that's cool to know, because I think a lot of people are going to want that, of being able to just like get right in, dive in. And so it sounds like you guys are making efforts to make that, which I can't imagine doing it any other way. Like you put this amount of years into this. You guys are just want to get all the hurdles out of the way and get people in.
Oh yeah.
Try it out.
I certainly do. I personally have a vested interest in having the project out as soon as humanly possible, because I started this when I was young in high school. I'm now
Yeah.
finishing university. So that's pretty telling of the amount of time that I've physically spent working on this mod. Tens of, like, at least thousands of hours have been put into the mod,
Sure.
by me and by every other person on the team. And so we all have a vested interest in having the mod done as humanly possible. As I said, we're like within the last stages of just voice acting and polishing and bug testing, because that's really what's needed. We've got 3 or 4 major characters in the pipeline for voice acting at the moment. All the major faction leaders are currently being voiced, and they're, to me at least, the most important characters, because they're the ones you're going to be interacting with the most throughout all of the major quest lines, and all tons and tons and tons and tons. I can't stress that enough. There are tons of other side quest and smaller quest characters voiced for all the different quest lines and all the side quests and content, stuff like that. So there's no lack of voiced content anywhere.
That's awesome. Love hearing that. It's hard to go back. Like once trying to go back to old school RPGs and stuff without voice is pretty tough to swallow anymore.
Oh, it really is.
So what was in all these years? So you've been doing this for, I mean, it sounds like, so you started in high school. So you've been doing this 7 years or so. What has been
for me? It was 5. Just
okay.
For
Oh,
5
right.
years
But the
now,
team
yeah.
the team's been doing it almost 7 years then, right? Or have they been
6,
has it
7
been
years,
longer?
yeah.
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 For you personally, what has been the biggest challenge in all of this? Because that's a long time to do this. Optimization. Okay.
Has been the biggest challenge, because I think it is an area that we really don't, as a Fallout modding community, fully understand how to do well, because we just want to make the coolest, the good lookingest. Yeah, that's great English by me. The best looking mod we possibly can. And at the same time, I don't think we truly understand the limits of this engine. It is a 32-bit engine. It can only run at about 3.4 gigabytes before it dies. Before it's like, nope, I'm kicking the bucket, stepping out the back door, having a good day, and walking away. It's a frustrating point, honestly. It's been the most frustrating thing of working on the mod all these years, because you really do have to push for every little optimization, every few frames. You have to push for weeks to get that little bit of performance. Within the last few months, I found, as a new discovery in the community, actually, what causes significant draw call increases through like some weird backwards exporter problem with NIFs. And that reduced our draw calls by like 45,000 in some areas, which is gigantic.
Yeah, that's
And
nuts.
it'll improve performance in so many different areas, as well as stability as well. I would like to imagine, through the years of consistent work that I've put in, stability is by far the biggest accomplishment that I've made to this mod just by working on it for so long. Like, I streamed the Frontier live to the Frontier server the other night for about 2 hours straight, and I only had 2 crashes the whole time, both of which I investigated and found the issues for and fixed. And really, it's a testament to just how stable the mod really is, because we've done everything we can to try and fix those problems, because nobody wants to play a mod that crashes every 5 minutes. And to an extent, no one wants to play a mod that dips their FPS into 5 or 10 or 20 frames. That being said, there are definitely areas where we could improve our performance, and we're trying to do that a bit more before release. Unfortunately, just with how old this engine is, having a better CPU will lead to a much, much better performing game than having a good GPU. I upgraded from a Ryzen 5 1500, which is a very, very low end sort of CPU. No, it's like $200 or something.
Sure.
To a i9 9900K, balls to the wall sort of CPU, 8 cores, 16 threads. And my performance drop was more, performance increase rather, was more substantial than when I upgraded to a RTX 2070 Super. So having a good CPU will be really crucial to getting the best performance you can in the Frontier. I'm not saying go out and upgrade your systems. What I am saying, however, is that I can't guarantee that you will always be running at 60 or above. And it's a personal apology that I put out to everyone. But just with the limitations of this engine and with some weird quirks of the engine, we just can't get performance to the point where every single person on every single rig is getting 60 FPS, because this game was meant to run on hardware from 11 years ago, and it's so CPU bound that, you can upgrade to a 2080 Ti and you would still have issues if you had a really terrible CPU.
It's so funny. You're speaking my language so hard right now. This is the Fallout 4 still has all of these issues. It has massive draw call problems. It's very CPU bound. Like I have multiple computers I develop on. And my one with a 970 runs better than my 2060 in Fallout 4 because the game is so CPU bound, and it's just like, all right, so that's just the way it is, especially with scripting. Like with Papyrus, I imagine it's similar for the whatever scripting extender you're using. I think it's the same type of thing. Anything you're doing at runtime, all that scripting definitely is CPU bound. And so it's still such a bummer that still to this day, like 10 we're operating an engine that was made or updated several times, still the same problems. We'll see. And I imagine looking at 76, when people start modding that, same problems it's going to have. So could be a while before we get out of this trap.
Yeah, I do genuinely wish that the game wasn't so CPU bound, but that's unfortunately the way the engine is. It's a Frankenstein of an engine from 20 years ago. It's been used for so many different things, and we're really pushing this engine to the absolute wall. And we've really tried to scale back. Like, we've reduced the textures, the size of textures across the entire mod by like multiple gigabytes just to increase performance. And it certainly has. Like, you won't run out of memory in too many areas of the Frontier anymore. Almost none with the changes I've made recently. But you're not going to be running 60 FPS everywhere if you're running a terrible CPU. Right. Which is why I like the idea of YouTubers having long form playthroughs, like Gopher, Alchest Breach, Mr. Matty Plays, all of those having long form playthroughs running on really good hardware, like mine. I think that's a great way for people to experience the Frontier if they're not really happy with the 30, 40 FPS that they're getting in some areas. Large swaths of the world space will run at 60, but the more heavily populated areas will have some issues with regards to performance, rather.
Sure. Well, and I've seen some in some of the little preview videos that you've shown. I know we don't know the context of it, but they look like some pretty insane battles going on that I imagine same issue, that it's going to be difficult to have that much AI running, that many special effects, all in an open area happening without some performance drop. Like that's expected,
Yeah,
I think.
no, it's we've really tried to make sure that battles are as optimized as possible. But as I said, it really just depends on your hardware. If you're running good hardware, you're going to get good frames. If you're running below average hardware, you're not
Right.
going to get great frames. And I know people are going to use the excuse of this game was built to run on hardware
Right.
10 times less powerful than what we
Yeah.
have currently. But people have to understand that because this game is so physically CPU bound and because it can only use like 3 gigs of RAM, it can't handle not having the ability to pump like thousands and thousands of draw calls into the CPU every second to process them. You know,
Right.
if your CPU is garbage, don't expect to be running the Frontier at 60 frames all the time. But do expect at the very least that the Frontier will be stable because it is, as long as you're not running. I've been a little too liberal in my use of the word trashy
Ha.
mods recently.
Okay.
Um, but that is unfortunately the case in some sense, or just buggy mods. Um, as long as you're not running those mods, you will have a stable experience in the Frontier, I believe. I can't guarantee it, but I have experienced incredible stability with the Frontier over the last couple months and the last few years.
That's good to hear. And there's still a few handful of months in development, and I imagine this is the type of stuff you're just keeping an eye on, making sure that any of these little hiccups that are going to interrupt people's experience are going to be taken care of. So I don't think there's a lot of concern there. I think people have to understand by now, like it's the engine's been around this long, and most people probably don't have nonstop 60 FPS in this game, especially if they're playing a heavily modded build. I think it's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
so. I don't think anybody's going to fault you there. And looking at if if everything lives up to just the stuff you're teasing us with, and I imagine you're keeping the best stuff under wraps because you want to save some surprises. That I think we'll be happy with the result, even if we've got to dip a little bit below that
Oh yeah,
60.
we've really tried to keep the story, especially the story, under wraps. I know other mods had a problem where they would um, put out story spoilers way too early,
Right.
and that Fallout 4 had that problem as well. They spoiled most of their story before release, all their major scenes. Um, we don't want to spoil any more of the main quests because we want people to experience them the first time. Like in the past few years, we've had the issue where we've sort of spoiled the NCR main quest, mostly just the first chapter. There's
Sure.
5 chapters, but we spoiled most of the first chapter to the audience because we've been reusing sort of the same stuff for trailers because I won't go into it, but we just kept reusing the same stuff and over because it worked. So we want to try and keep as much of that story under wraps because we do believe it is quite a good story. Like each of the different quest lines have this specific amount of thematic overtones to it. You know, the NCR focuses on how important is one person, how important is the courier. The Legion will focus on the I won't go into it too much because I can feel myself starting to spoil stuff here because I can't help myself because I'm excited.
Sure.
But there are themes running throughout all of these main quest lines, and they feel like a novel at some point. They feel really well entrenched. They feel like they've been written well, at least to me. I might be biased as a project lead. I may be biased if the mod is well written, but from what I've seen from comments and such, I think people are enjoying the writing that we've shown off through the Ghoul Church and the other characters that we've shown off so
Yeah.
far, at least.
I think I'm convinced that the writing and the like little story moments are actually what everybody comes to RPGs for. Not like all the rest of the gameplay be damned. It needs to be serviceable, but really it's about like if you think about a lot of the most popular games before the open world craze took off, it was always like your reward for a lot of things. It wasn't like you were getting rewarded with new stats or equipment or level ups back in the day. It was always like you get new cutscenes or like new little bits of story, and like that's really what pulls us along to keep going through these games.
Yeah, exactly. As I going back to what we were talking about before, the world building, as you can do a quest and you go and do another quest and you're like, wow, I didn't know that these things were connected together because I read this note from like 5 hours ago that mentioned something in this quest. It's like, wow, that's a little story moment that I would have never experienced had I not done this quest earlier.
Sure.
Um,
And it would have been
That's
ruined
just
if you
yeah.
guys were spoiling all this stuff. Like
Yeah, no, exactly.
some of those moments, the impact is going to be bigger if you had no idea it was coming.
From all of the playtesters that we've had go through, to be completely honest with people, we haven't had many playtesters. I think we've had 3 playtesters currently, and that's it, because we don't feel comfortable giving the mod out to people that we don't trust.
Sure.
Because we don't want people to spoil and we don't want people to leak, because we have had some leak scares in the past with older versions of the mod that we don't want to happen this close to release. But the playtesters' feedback so far has been that, going back to what I said before as well, if you want to experience the absolute best that the New Vegas engine can offer, play the NCR main quest first, because it will blow your mind. It really, really
Oh wow,
will. It still blows my mind. Like, some of the stuff we're doing in the NCR main quest is just beyond what we thought was possible in any of the Fallout games this old. Like, it will really just knock your socks off.
Oh, so people like visually, people are going to be blown away. Not just like the story moment, but like what happens in the game world is going to feel crazy.
Oh, it is immense. And the Crusaders and the Legion, because they haven't had as much time to be worked on, they will feel more like traditional Fallout RPG experiences, with the Legion being very dialogue heavy, and the Crusaders being a great mix of the scripted action that the NCR has and Legion's very well-written dialogue. The lead for the Crusaders, Odin Sword, is actually a novelist, and he writes for a living. And it's got these incredible themes and this fantastic writing. It feels like you're watching and playing a real live story that could actually exist.
Oh, that's exciting. I thought you've really set the bar high for yourselves with that NCR talk.
Yeah, no, I do hope it may not be for everyone, because if we're being honest, it is at points, especially in the first chapter, very action heavy. And if you don't like action in New Vegas, you may not fully enjoy it. That being said, the themes and the sort of style of the NCR main quest changes a bit. Once you get into the second chapter, it slows down a bit, becomes more of like a traditional Fallout experience, and it really is incredible. It's my favorite quest line of the whole lot, because there's just so much power and so much just incredible storytelling in it. I don't want to set the bar too high, but it really is just
you've already done so. I think you declared it is the greatest thing to ever happen to Fallout.
No, I don't want to say that. That's a bit pretentious, but it is very good. I've enjoyed it very much. Devils has done an incredible job alongside all the voice actors. Thank you to Action Fighter 11 for working with Custom Call Club and the Creators Network, his little shindig to get all the voice acting implemented and all the voice acting done, because it takes a lot of time to do voice acting for a mod this large.
It does, and even just coordinating it all is crazy. Like getting keeping track of
he
who's doing the voices,
job.
and then you've got to go through and cut all the audio, pick out the best takes. It's a ton of work.
It really, really is, and I'm super happy that we've had him for this whole time. I want to tamper everyone's expectations for the mod, because I've seen what super high expectations can do for mods and for games. And so I just want to say, we hope people enjoy this.
Sure.
We've put a lot of passion and a lot of time and a lot of effort into making this. And as such, I hope more than anything that people get some enjoyment out of this mod and out of this project, and can go at the end of, the 10 hours, 50 hours, 100 hours. Wow, that was great. I really enjoyed that, because to me, that would be worth it. That would be worth the thousands of hours I've put into this mod, is if someone can say, wow, this was awesome, I would play it again.
Well, I can't imagine a better way to end this podcast. I will say one more thing is, this is why I keep reminding all of you watchers about the endorsements. Go endorse your mods and leave some comments. Let these mod authors know that their thousands of man hours are not wasted.
Yes.
Like that's our lifeblood, is hearing that you enjoyed our creations.
Yes, absolutely. I've been living off the comments from the 2 YouTube videos we've put up in the last couple of weeks, just like constantly refreshing YouTube Studio on my phone, waiting to see new comments saying, wow, that's awesome, because it gives me just a little boost of energy every time someone says, wow, this looks like it's going to be really good. And then it just sort of kills me when someone says, is this going to be on console? And I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, you got to.
It's all good, yeah.
Yeah, block the haters. Don't listen to that. It's very exciting. It's very exciting to see this coming out. I can't wait to give this a try. This is one of those mods I will reinstall New Vegas for. So thank you, TGSpy, for taking the time to talk with me today. And
thank you for having me.
Yeah, hopefully this gets the word out to anybody who's been living under a rock in the Fallout community.
Get out of your rocks, guys. Jeez.
Great talking with you, man. And I wish you guys luck in your release.
Well, thank you very much.